Hello everybody, John here, and today onto the garage. I'm in the garage with Purdy the XK8 and we're going to do a partial service with some parts sent by the lovely people at GSF Car Parts, and you guys get a chance to win literally up to £1,000 worth of parts. Check it out. Hi everybody, so today I'm going to do an oil and filter change on Purdy, the 1996 XK8 Jaguar. The reason for the timing of that is she literally had her MOT yesterday. So if you're not in the UK, that's our annual test of roadworthiness that all cars have to pass. Well, I tend to do a service after my MOT just so I know that there's nothing else to get. And I've used all sorts of suppliers for bits and pieces of parts over the years. Regulars to the channel will know I kind of had my favourites, but following some of the recent mods and tweaks I've done on the car, I've kind of fallen out of love a little bit with a couple of my suppliers because the parts they sent weren't great. And you can live with that on the grounds that they don't make them, they just distribute them. But the service after I discovered they weren't great wasn't to my liking. So very, very pleased that GSF Car Parts approached me. And full disclosure, GSF have sent me the bits and pieces I need for this oil change absolutely free of charge. And even after I'd given the speech, you can't script me, I won't do it, and I'm going to be honest about whatever I'm using and the experiences. And they were absolutely fine with that. There's their website address. They are a well-known, well-regarded parts provider in the UK, or auto factor, I guess you'd call it. They also do tools, garage spares, equipment, consumables. They've got a brilliant website which incorporates the facility to type in the registration number of your vehicle so that it can make recommendations about parts that will fit, filter all your searches. So very, very handy to have. It's a brand I know and trust anyway. And they do have local stockists. So you can either take advantage of their free delivery on orders over £25, or you can actually go to their stores and pick stuff up, or you can do click and collect. They've got all the features, 60-day returns, guarantees, all the rest of it. So I'm going to be using them for a little while. Yes, I've been sent something for free, but that's not the only reason. Now, hang around a little longer if you're interested in winning a load of parts or tools or even repairs for your vehicle from GSF. They've got a competition going on at the moment. I'm going to tell you all about it once I get underway with this little mini service. With oils and filters on cars I like and want to keep, I always try to stick to the very best brands. So we've gone for a MAN filter. We've gone from Castrol Magnatec 5W30. Again, the website for GSF can help you out with showing you the options that work for your car. I'm not going to go into all of the specifications that the oils come under. There are far better people than me to share the intricacies of this sort of thing. I'd really recommend O&DR Modurol. I'll put a link to their site in the description below. Damien has done a fantastic video on the specs of oils, particularly for the Jaguar XK8. It'll blow your mind. I tend to stick to Castrol, Mobil, particularly Mobil 1, though it's rather expensive. Petronas is also good, Shell, those sorts of brands. If you're in the States, I know an awful lot of my subscribers recommend Pennzoil, but that's what I've got. And I've also got a sump plug, a BGA Automotive sump plug. So typically your sump plug is absolutely fine. It's the sealing ring that needs replacing. And if I just pop this open for you, what we'll see is on almost all older cars, you'll have a copper ring as your sealing thing. It's a crush washer, and you can buy boxes of those. The Jaguar XK8 has a kind of shaped flanged rubber washer, so it's worth buying a new sump plug, even if it's just maybe every other oil change, because that is a shaped item and hard to obtain separately. I know that internet scaremongers would definitely disagree, but Jaguars, particularly the XK8, are not difficult cars to work on when it comes to general servicing. In fact, the XK8 is one of the easiest cars to do a general service on. And I must say that you do not need a lift like I've got to do a service on one of these. A jack and some axle stands would be more than sufficient. However, I have got a little bit of a poorly arm. I do own a scissor lift, so I'm not going to be doing that just to prove a point. You don't need much in the way of tools for this job. You need maybe something to remove the oil filter. You'll also need a 13mm socket on a ratchet or an appropriate spanner, and you need something to collect your oil in. And you may need an 8mm spanner if, as we hope, your alternator air ducting is still in place. Let's have a little look underneath here, guys. So there's the front of the car. Look back, look back, look back. That's the sump of the engine. And there is a sump plug. Really couldn't be much easier. The oil filter is just here, and that is obscured by this device, which is the air intake knacker scoop, or whatever you want to call it, that directs air into this little trumpet that goes up to the alternator. You just need to remove this plastic panel to get good access to that filter. I like to use these jerry can style catchers because as a lean person at heart, it eliminates a step. So, you know, this is a funnel, it collects the oil, or at least most of it. You could do this neck being slightly lower, and then you screw a top on and you've got your container to take it to the local council disposal point rather than decanting. And because I've got the luxury of doing this on the lift, I've got my bin just so that I can stand that on top of the bin, and I got a shorter distance for it to fall, so I spill less. If you're looking at the underside of a coupe or coupe rather than a convertible, then you won't have these bars. They're extra stiffening, but was only present on convertible cars. 8mm spanner on there. Once you've got that undone, you just pull back and then unhook it from the front, and you should be able to get the thing off. I've warmed the engine up before I started this video. It's not hot, so I can't touch it, but it's warm. So if the engine oil is a little bit warm, then you get more of it out more easily, more quickly. All we've got to do, pop our socket on there, and loosen it off a touch. There we go, that's enough. Now pull in my oil catching arrangement. There's always a little bit of guesswork involved in where you put the container, because the oil's going to come out at quite a gush, so you've got to kind of predict the arc. But I think I've got it about right. All right, let's see how good my guess is. Hey, pretty bloody good, John. Well done me. So I'm just going to stick with it for a moment, because the initial splurge comes out a long way and then it backs off. I even managed to get entertainment from doing oil changes. How clean can I do the job? So the oil that's coming out has been in there a year, and based on my mileage, that hasn't done much work. So I tend to change the oil in this car every year. It only does, I'm going to say, about 6,000 miles a year. So the oil won't be damaged to any great extent. In fact, if you're using good quality oil, I once did a lot of work with some scientists from Mobile, and they told me that there was nothing in any commercially available car engine that could produce sufficient heat or pressure to damage Mobile 1. So in effect, if you were prepared to filter it, strain it, get all of the soot and bits of engine potentially out of that oil, then you could reuse it indefinitely. Normal people don't do that because it costs you a fortune to clean the oil. But a car that doesn't see many miles, it's still worth changing the oil every year if you want to keep it and keep it in perfect nick, because the short runs, the little drives, they build up more condensation inside the engine than normal big runs do. So the cold surfaces start to warm up, you get a little bit of condensation forms, that gets emulsified in the oil. It doesn't get the chance to burn back off and evaporate and be rebreathed by the engine in the same way that a car that's doing huge miles all the time would do. And as engines start to wear, you get a little bit of blow past, you get fuel mixing with the oil. And again, that's worst at startup. So if all you're doing is short startups and again, not getting the engine really thoroughly to temperature for a prolonged period, then you're not going to have the best oil. So this is the sump plug that's been in, to be fair, a little over 12 months and has been used twice. And I don't know if you can see the rubber seal. It does have a lip, but it's compressed and shaped, and this is practically flat now. And let's just compare to this. And that's why it's worth buying a new sump plug now and again for a Jag, for an XK8 particularly, because of this shaped washer. Unless you can get hold of these. GSF's price for that, £5.70. So hardly a big deal, is it, guys? Invest £5.70 in your car. While we're on the subject of prices, and yes, I didn't pay for these. Thank you so much, GSF. I love you. But to give you an indication, a good quality filter, a man filter, £12. And Castrol Magnatech, these are the 4-litre ones. They're £40 on GSF's website. But they've generally got a code going on at the moment. There's a Black Friday thing going, but other times of the year there are deals going as well. So check it out. But at the beginning, I mentioned the opportunity for you folks to get some car parts for free. What's that all about? Well, it is a competition. You've only got till the end of December to do so. You can enter GSF's Get Your Motor Running competition. There's a song about that somewhere. And it's in 2 categories or 2 flavours. The first one is if you or somebody you know or somebody you think deserves a little bit of help is struggling to get their vehicle back on the road following maybe an MOT failure or some other disaster, and they really need their car, then you can enter or enter on their behalf. And all you've got to do is go to GSF's website, go to the bottom and you'll find the link to Get Your Motor Running, which is the competition. There's a little entry form. And you just need to bring that up, put your name in, and type a few sentences, a paragraph about what the situation is and why you or this person needs to get their car back up and running again, get their motor running. And for the lucky winners, GSF will provide the parts and the labour to fix those vehicles and get them back on the road doing their little bit, giving back to the motoring community. For those of you who are more sort of hobby car folks, a lot like myself, you might be more interested in the other part of the competition, which is the bringing your dream car back to life part. And that really is for the spanner folk, the garage folk, the petrol heads who, you know, they know how to do stuff. They want to be able to do stuff, but maybe just can't afford it. Again, enter that part of the competition. Tell GSF your story, what your vehicle is, what you're trying to do to it. It could be just to improve it, to modify it, to restore it, or make that final tweak to make it concours. Doesn't really matter, just tell the story. And they're going to provide £1,000 worth of parts to the selected winners in that category, and that's going to make a big dent in any restoration or modification project. In terms of entry criteria, there's not a lot to it. You're not going to be too excluded. You've got to be over 18, so a grown-up. That's arguable for me. You've got to have a UK driver's licence. You've got to live in the UK, because this is a UK-based activity by a UK-based business. And you must own your vehicle outright. And as long as you're prepared to share a little bit of your story, then why wouldn't you? There's a chance that you're going to get your car fixed and back on the road, or get £1,000 of parts to improve it, modify it, restore it. Thank you so much, GSF. And that's the sort of activity that makes me think, this time I'm a little bit more happy that I'm going to stick with GSF when I'm buying my car parts in future, because price is one part of the equation. The other part is service and feeling you're working with decent people at decent companies. Right, I think my oil should have finished draining down by now, so I'll get underneath there and have a little look. And I'll put links in the description below this video if you want them to the website for GSF, the actual competition, but you can find it online, very easy. We can go on TikTok and Facebook for GSF and enter via that route as well. So what I'm going to do, wipe this surface nice and clean, just a touch of oil onto the new sump plug, a little bit on the thread, a little bit on the seal, and we'll pop that back in there. I'll tighten that up. There is a torque on this, a setting. It's 25 Newton meters, but most people are not going to have a torque wrench with that as a setting. That's kind of an in-betweeny torque wrench. If you have, great, use it, but it's so not critical. In fact, the most critical thing with these is don't go mad. You're just crushing up a rubber ring at the end of the day. So you can do it by feel quite happily. Let's show you, if you can do such a thing, how tight. Look where my hand is on my ratchet. I'm not even on this side of the ratchet, on this side of it. So I'm giving it a good push, and that'll do. Even if the whole of the rest of your car is covered in dirt and oil, just clean around the sump plug at this stage, so that if it leaks or drips, you'll know straight away. So our next step is to get the oil filter off with the duct for the alternator cooling out of the way. It's quite good access. It's better access actually than almost any car I work on regularly. I have got still a bit of a gimpy wing, so my grip is not best and I'm wrong-handing myself. So I am going to use my tool to remove the oil filter, but as I say, most of you are going to be able to turn that by hand, I think. If you can't undo it and you don't have any form of oil filter tool, just place a straight bladed screwdriver against the cartridge, the white part, and knock it through, like use it as a chisel if you like. It'll puncture this quite easily. Don't go through the middle, go sort of off centre. And once you've got a screwdriver for it, you'll be able to lever it and turn it round. You will spill oil that way, obviously, so that's why it's not the #1 choice. These sorts of tools that I've got in my hand are a better option. But if you haven't got one, you haven't got one. And you can see it's just a leather strap with a lever on it. But really, you shouldn't have to use a tool because they're not very tight. The correct torque for the sump plug is 25 Newton meters. For this, I think it's 15. Now, I've put my bin to collect some oil below this. That's the oil coming out of the filter. So it'll stop reasonably quickly. It's the negative of a filter that's mounted sideways like that rather than screwed up, but it does make them very easy to remove. Okay, so those of you who've got the same car as me, so mine's an early 1996 Jaguar XK8. This is a W719/7, and it's got the equivalents with Bosch, Fram, Hengst, Knechtmal, Pure Flux, and a UFI code. So all the links and compatibilities with other filters. Being a quality product, quality instructions. Made in Germany, W719/7, brake maker's brand. And don't crush the filter. Don't use a knife on the filter. Look at your manual. Don't chuck it in the bin. Step 1, oil the ring. Step 2, screw the filter on. Step 3, 3/4 of a turn. So what that means is tighten it up till it stops and 3/4 of a turn more. Again, it gives you that indication these are not meant to be super tight. Fill up the oil until halfway between min and max. Steps 4 and 7, 7 being the last one. Start the engine. Check for leaks. Where's step 7? Oh yeah. Check the oil. Get it halfway between min and max. Nice, simple, straightforward. A lot of people will fill an oil filter with oil before they install it. You can have arguments either way, but on a Jaguar XK8 there really is no argument because it's fitted that way. So if you fill it full of oil, you're just going to tip it straight back out. Just lubricate the sealing ring. That's all you've got to do. And all I'm going to do is oil up my gloved finger and make sure that that is well lubed. Why we're doing that? Because we're going to tighten it by hand and then tighten it some more. And if this was actually really grippy and the area you're going to seal it against on the engine was dry and clean, then it actually might stop you from turning it quite as far as you'd want to, and it wouldn't be as tight as you want it to be. Just clean up this area. These have got nice big chunky threads, so it's hard to cross thread these. They go on very easily, very nicely. So we're going to follow the instructions. What the instructions mean is turn it until it's making contact with the block, so it's tightened all the way up. Then what we're going to do is 3/4 of a turn. So I've got the middle of the instructions facing down, 3/4 of a turn is the middle of the instructions facing forward. Nearly there, and the only concession to tightening, if you want to call it a tool, is I've got oily gloves, so I'm just going to clean it up, make sure there's no oil anywhere, and then I'm going to take my oily glove off, and hey presto, Middle of the instructions probably gone a little bit past centre. So literally just hand tightened. Finally, for the underside, we need to put a bit of scooping the ducting back. Don't forget to put it back. That takes the air up and blows it into the back of the alternator, and the alternator's tucked up by the engine and it can easily overheat and cook. This increases its efficiency dramatically. This passes over the cross brace like so, and then pull it back towards you and goes into place like so. A lot of people fit them upside down. It's sort of an aerodynamic thing rather than a literal scoop. The surface will draw the air up. All XK8s and XKRs were fitted with these. Many XK8s, XKRs are missing these. And it's usually because once upon a time the car went to a non-jag, non-caring oil and brake pad type place. The apprentice couldn't work out how to get to the oil filter, so fiddled around and eventually ripped this bit of plastic off, or unscrewed it to be generous. But by the time they come to put it all back together, they forgot or couldn't be bothered, because look at it, it obviously does nothing. Worth a quick check under your car. You should have one. Okay, so it's time to clean our dipstick and put some fresh oil in. So start with clean dipstick. 2 holes. The first one, the lowest one, is the low mark. The highest one is the high mark. Ideally we'd be halfway between on most cars. However, with the XK8s, XKRs, there was a technical bulletin launched. For XKRs, we're getting oil starvation when doing prolonged banked turns or going around islands very fast or on track. And so that caused Jaguar to revise the dipstick with the hole move further up. Actually, it's just a shorter dipstick, obviously. But the distance it moves up adds about ½ litre of oil. So my top tip is, on an XK8, XKR, particularly an early one, fill up to the maximum. That way, it doesn't really matter if you've got the upgraded or not upgraded dipstick, you're doing the right thing. Onto our oil filler. Always check on that, see if you've got any mayonnaise looking substances. That would be emulsified oil, oil with water. That's usually a bad sign. It could be a head gasket gone, but occasionally it's just condensation because a car doesn't get driven very far or very often. So if you do get mayonnaise a little bit, clean it off, see if it comes back after you've driven the car for a decent distance. So start with that. Then you're definitely going to need a funnel. I've got this really nice long Nielsen one. You particularly want a funnel on XK8 because you do get people saying after an oil change, my car started running rough. What has the garage done? Blah, blah, blah. If you spill a little bit of oil, it sits on that seam there. These covers prevent oil and water going into the spark plug holes and shorting out the coils. On a lot of cars, there is a seal down there, a boot, if you like, over the coil. These don't have them because this is the boot. It's got a rubber seal around it. So if the sealer's gone, if the screws are a bit loose, and you pour liquid onto this gap, it will find its way into the spark plug holes and it will run rough. If you've got an XKR, the vents in the bonnet let rainwater in, unfortunately, and sometimes they're the ones that suffer most with misfires, bad coils, bad spark plugs, and a lot of it's just moisture getting in there. So use a funnel so you don't spill. I've got 4 litres of Magnatec, which I'm going to drop in. So the engine needs about 6.5 litres to fill up. Rather more if you've managed to empty out the oil coolers and bits and pieces, but generally it's about 6.5. It also depends if you've tilted the car while you were filling it, that sort of thing, or emptying it, I should say. Okay, that's our first 4 litres in. Give it a minute or two to drain down into the sump, obviously, but I don't know if you're going to see that on film or not. We're just shy of minimum, and I would suggest by the time the oil has settled and run through, it'll be on the minimum with 4 litres. Once you've got it up to the full mark, want to start your engine. Don't rev it. Just want to pump the oil around. I have, of course, opened the garage door a little so that I can let the fumes out the back. But it's very windy outside, so I don't want to let too much noise in. And all we're doing is just allowing the oil pump to prime up properly, the oil filter to prime up properly, move the oil around. And then once she's run for, I don't know, I'll let her idle for 5 minutes. We'll turn her off, give her another 5 minutes to settle, and then re-dipstick her, find out how much more oil I need to add. Okay, the car's been sitting for a couple of minutes after I've turned her off. Let's just have a little look. So you're going to clean your dipstick the first time because the oil will have splashed around because the engine is running. But yeah, that needs more oil. All that racket is my roller blind doors rattling because I've got them half open because I've had the engine running. So back in with the funnel, and after several goes, hopefully you can see I've just about got it to hit the max mark. It's desperately hard to tell with clean oil. So our oil is all good for another year. So oil changes, general servicing, if I'm honest, on the Jaguar XK8 is not difficult. Oil change definitely is something you could have a crack at yourselves, guys, as long as you are capable enough, confident enough to get your car up on axle stands as a minimum to do the draining down. The rest of it is so easy. And it's not even very expensive, even when using really good quality products like this, as long as you get a decent supplier. And obviously at the moment, big fan of GSF. Thank you so much, GSF, for getting involved with sending some stuff over. We'll definitely use you for the future. And remember, guys, they're doing something good for the petrolhead community in the UK. So do something good for them by just getting involved with their competition. Send them some entries. Send some entries for your friends and relations who maybe need some help, because getting your car fixed can be very expensive, particularly if you can't do it yourself. And these guys are going to help a few folk out. And remember, Christmas is coming. So if you want a 2025 calendar, that's the 2024 one from To The Garage, then you've got to put your order in the very near future, or you'll miss your opportunity to get it this side of Christmas. As the post takes a little bit of time, just go on over to www.tothegarage.co.uk and look for the tab that says shop. On there you'll find the links to the 2025 XK8 calendar. And just to let you know, even whilst making this video, my ABS and stability control lights have been on and are now back off again. So definitely an intermittent fault. And as I've already changed wheel sensors and checked out the link cables, ABS control module, here we come. If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.